Hey everyone, in this one we are looking at your evaluation section of your PSMT. Now before you get too overwhelmed by it, it's just that there's a whole lot of information here so that it's all kind of on one page for me. I will print this off for students and send to other teachers as well so that you can use some questions that help you guide your PSMT. So when we have a look here, it's evaluation of your results. So this comes directly from your task sheet. And what we're going to do is, what I want you to consider is that this is an evaluation. So to evaluate something, you're looking for the strengths and limitations, or like you're weighing up the value of the solution. And you need to want to think about if it's reasonable, so if it really reflects real life. And appraising just means to make an assessment of the strengths and limitations. So what went well, or what was used really well that reflects real life, and what was the limitation, so what's something that's stopping the solution being truly accurate. So that's what we are looking at in your evaluation. You don't want to restate your answer, and you don't want to rewrite the question here. It's not like I needed to, the task was to find the best guided. You want to actually link back to all these things, your observations, your assumptions, and your plan. Like, how did you solve the problem, and things that were good and bad in your model or your design, and things that could possibly improve, so be better if you could repeat it. And then what was good about the method that you used, and was your answer reasonable? So let's have a look here. This bit here is your ISMG, so the instrument specific guidance, the information that's coming from there. But you have a look at just this first section here. The difference between, so you need to explain the procedures that you used to make the decisions. So that is there as well. The explanation of procedures used to make a decision. But the difference between this one and this one here is there's justification. That means using evidence to support your position. And use decisions made using mathematical reasoning. So this is where you use the mathematics to justify. So how does the math give you evidence to explain the procedures? So that's what we're looking for there. And then this one here is just an explanation of procedures to use. So again, if you have a look here, I cannot stress enough that an A-level student will use evidence. So that's going to match this one here. So these questions here, and I'll just color this in green so you know that this bit here is an explanation. I will provide you guys this question sheet, like a checklist, so that helps you write your evaluation. What I would recommend though, what I want to make sure is that you guys aren't getting overwhelmed by the fact that, oh my goodness, it's like a page worth of questions. I have to answer all these questions. You want to make sure that these might be ways to start a question or ways to address each section here. So don't feel like you have to answer every one of those questions to get an A. We're looking for explanation of procedures. So any procedure, more than one, using mathematical reasoning. Okay, explanation of procedures, so more than one. So you only have to explain, say, 2 procedures. And that's pretty simple because it's like your whole process anyway. Design, calculate. There's 2 procedures. All right. So in here, what we're looking for is, say, why did you pick your method to solve the problem? So how did your plan work? What was your plan? And did it help you? Did that strategy help you solve the problem? Now this one here, why might it be important to consider your things here? This is because it is in your must do. If you think about it, links back to the must do section on your criteria sheet. So that might be why it was important. There's an explanation of that. Now, so it was important to consider water tanks, pathways, and garden beds, as this was a requirement of the design. For example, the water tank was for 2 by 2 meters, and pathways had to be 1 meter wide. That is an A-level response to this here. So can you see what the difference is between just going, it was important to think of the water tank pathway and garden beds because I was told to do so? That's an explanation of something, but giving the evidence behind it. So, in a water tank, pathways and garden beds were considered because a water tank is needed for water, pathways needed for access, and they had to be at least 1 meter wide, and the garden beds for the vegetables to be grown in. Like, they're, again, giving more evidence or further explanation of why you would, provide evidence for your justification in your mathematical procedures. So your mathematical procedures is that you're going to be using, like, what shapes did you consider? I considered this shape. The area of that was because the area was easy to calculate using this formula, length times width equals blah, blah, blah. So that's something that you might do if you added extra things. So again, these are just like starting questions that might help you write this section here. So you can use it as a sentence starter. Like, the method selected or the method picked to solve this problem was blah. This was important because blah. That is the first sentence was your explaining. Second was your A-level component. So second part. All right, let's have a look at the next section here. Evaluation of reasonableness of solutions considered by results and assumptions or observations. And then the statement about the reasonableness of the solutions considering the context of the task. The difference here is that you are considering all aspects, and then a statement about the reasonableness. So what we're looking for when we say the reasonableness of the solution is, does this relate to real life, or how does these things, how does your answer actually fare in relation to your observation and assumptions? Now that can be quite a tricky thing to do. How did you use your observation assumptions to solve the problems? So things like, I needed to include water tank, pathways, garden beds. They would be your observations. Why are they important? So can you see why you might not want to double up again on sentences? You may have already included that. But you might have things like the assumption. So if the ground wasn't flat, what would happen to your solution? You might have issues with it because you might actually, your garden, if we're having a look at the side of your garden, even though it's a rectangle, this is the slope, and if I put a garden bed on here, it's going to have a very different volume to, say, if I put a garden bed on a flat surface. So that's something that you might want to consider. That is how you might, and you would show that your calculations demonstrate that your answer is reasonable. So you might think about an example to show that that is reflective of real life. So if you're getting like 100 centimeters squared for an area, you're probably not reasonable. It might be 10 meters squared or 100 meters, probably not so much that one, 10 meters squared. So you might find that that is what you might have done an error in your calculations, and hopefully you've checked them and these units are more appropriate than these units. All right, and strengths and limitations. So again, evaluation, finding the pluses and minuses within the strengths and limitations of the solution or model, and just a statement. So if you just said something that was done well was blah, it's going to give you that statement and a statement about why it was limited and why. That's what's going to give you your higher marks. Is why is it important? Because it's that evaluation again. All right, and then this one here is going to be that. All right, so hopefully that helps guide your evaluation. Sorry, that was quite long. I'm just going to write down some sentence starters in the video here for you for each one of these sections so that you can, if you need like a topic sentence for each one of these little paragraphs. Remember, doesn't need to be really long. It just needs to make sure that you are, if you're aiming for these 4 to 5 marks, so remember A or B level students, if you're aiming for that, to make sure that you always provide evidence or an explanation to your explanation, Okay, so give me a moment. I'll just give you some sentence starters. So there you go. You have the green one. So in order to design the best garden, procedures were considered. So that's for your justification. Then we have the reasonableness, observation and assumptions and results were considered when determining the reasonableness of the solution. And your last one, the strengths and limitations were thought about or considered. So feel free to thesaurus those and give yourself some other synonyms, so words that mean the same thing, but that is a general starting point for you. All the best. Stay awesome. Year 7. See you later. Bye.